This video is going to talk about converting percents into decimals and decimals into percents. Before doing that, we're going to review a little bit of our multiplication and division rules. And we're going to be looking at multiplying and dividing with 10 or 100. When I have the number 19 and I multiply it times 10, I end up with 190. Basically what happens is we have 19 and we need to add a 0 to it. So the decimal that was at the end of 19 has to shift over 1 because now our answer is 190 instead of just 19. The same thing happens with 19 times 100. 19 times 100, all we're going to do is add those two zeros onto the end. So we have to shift the decimal over 2 spots. When we're dividing by 100, the same thing happens, but the decimal needs to move the other direction because we're getting rid of those zeros. So 1,900 divided by 100 is going to be just 19. It used to be 1,900 and then 2 zeros disappeared. So the decimal shifted over 2 places to just make it 19. Let's take a look at another example. Maybe this will be easier. In our other example, we have 37 and 14 hundredths times 100. When I'm multiplying by 100, that decimal still needs to shift over 2 places, even though I'm not adding the 2 zeros, because there's no good place to add the zeros here that's going to make a difference. That doesn't make sense because you don't need those zeros. So instead of adding the zeros in, we're just going to use the decimal movement. 1, 2. 1, 2. When I divide by 100, when I divide 37 and 14 hundredths by 100, I'm going to move the decimal the other direction because I'm dividing by 100 the same way I did over here. Because we're not taking zeros away, we can't just make the 14 disappear because this isn't actually a magic show. So we just have to move that decimal 2 times. If you want to look at the mathematics point of view, that will help you to understand this next part. Let's take a look at converting a percent into a decimal. We have 56%. 56%. In order to convert 56% into a decimal, we need to divide by 100. Because 56% says out of 100, 56 is the number we're looking at. But that's not a whole number. 56 over 100 is not a whole number. 56% is not saying the entirety, the 100%, it's just a part of it. So we are going to move that decimal 2 places to the left. So we have 0.56. Now you can think of it as dividing by 100 and moving the decimal space 2 points to the left. Or you can think about it this way, and it's going to get a little bit sappy, so just kind of stick with me. The decimal and the percent, madly in love with each other. Madly in love with each other. So when you have 56%, they're great, because they're standing, they're there, they're happy, they're good at whatever, however far away they are. But one day, for whatever reason, the percent sign disappears. That decimal is devastated. So it runs 2 places looking for the percent sign. Unfortunately, it's a decimal and it can't run very far, so it can only go 2 spaces. So it runs away from the percent sign from where it was looking, trying to see if it can find it. Let's look at a couple other examples now that we know kind of both ways to look at this. Well, now the dot shifted. That's okay. Let's look at 9%. 9% as a percentage. We have this decimal hiding out here. Decimal and the percent sign are super happy until we try to convert this number into a decimal. Then what we have to do, we erase the percent sign and the decimal is devastated and runs 2 spots looking for the percent sign. So we end up with .9. We have to put something in that blank, so we're going to put a 0. Simple as that. Let's look at 876%. You don't see a decimal, but remember, a decimal is always at the end of any whole number, just like a period in a sentence. Percent sign is going to disappear, and that decimal is going to run 2 spots, so our final answer is 8 and 76 hundredths. We have 2 more to look at just so that we can totally understand where we're coming from. Let's look at 17 and 3/10%. Now, in this example, the decimal and the percent aren't super close distance-wise, but they're still so close in their hearts. So, when that percent sign disappears, the decimal is still going to be devastated. It's going to run 2 spots, and we're going to end up with 173 thousandths. Last one I'm going to give you is what happens if we have 0.8%. These are all just examples to show you that it doesn't matter where the decimal is. It always moves 2 places when we're converting percents and decimals and percents. 0.8%, decimal and the percent, they're there, they're happy until the percent sign disappears. Decimal runs away looking for it, and we end up with 0.008. And that is how you convert percents into decimals. On your form, you're going to be asked to convert 32% and to convert 0.6% into decimals. All right, now we're going to talk about converting decimals into percents. And that is actually going to be basically the same thing we've been doing, except now the decimal is going to move closer to the percent sign. So let's take 13 hundredths. 13 hundredths, we want to convert that into a percent. In order to do that, our percent sign is going to come back. And that decimal is going to be so happy to see the percent sign, it's going to move all the 2 spaces it can so that our answer is 13%. Remember, the decimal only moves 2 spaces because it's a decimal, it's small, it's kind of weak. Let's take a look at 0.4 or 4/10. To convert 4/10 into a percentage, we're going to put the percent sign, it's going to appear, and the decimal is going to move 2 spaces closer to the percent sign. So we're going to end up with, sometimes you'll have to move the percent sign if you really need to write it first. There's a blank spot here. In that blank spot, we're going to put a 0 because there's nothing there. So when we convert it, it becomes 40%. Instead of just 0.4, it's now 40%. They mean the same thing. Let's look at 327 thousandths. Remember that percent sign, when it magically appears and comes back, that decimal is so happy, it runs 2 spaces to be closer. 32 7/10%. 2 more examples. What happens if we just have 52? And we want to convert 52 into a percentage. There's no decimal here, but it is a whole number, and because it's a whole number, we know that the period is at the end of the number, just like a period in a sentence, or that the decimal is at the end of the number, just like a period in a sentence. So when the percent sign appears, the decimal is going to run 2 spaces closer, and we'll end up with 5,200%. And that's a huge percentage. But if you're trying to take 52 without the decimal, it's going to be a really huge percentage. One more example, and I'm going to give you your work. Let's take the number 17 4/10. In order to convert this into a decimal, the percent sign is going to appear, the decimal is going to run 2 spaces closer to be with it. 174, we need something in here. 1,740%. Now, what you're going to be asked to do on your Google form is to convert 0.5 or 5/10 and also 73 hundredths into a percent.